Today's question comes from Blake Still, where he asks, what's the most effective way to learn and memorize jazz standards? That's coming up next, so hang with me. You know, a common problem is that many people have been programmed to learn music in an ineffectual way. There's many music schools that set up exams to be passed, not learned. And because of this, in my experience, there's so many who either simply forget what they've originally learned, while at the same time will continue to rely on learning by rote, along with a bunch of other unsuccessful methods of memorization. You know, an important consequence of learning music theory and harmony correctly is that it will provide you with the tools for memorization to firmly take place. But there is a caveat to this, because learning music theory for just the sake of it will get you absolutely nowhere. You must be able to understand how to make the connection and translate this seamlessly to your bass guitar. Another problem exists where people expect to practice a series of exercises on their bass and then miraculously start playing killer walking bass lines along with improvising fluidly through the changes that they're trying to learn. That's the same as starting with the letter A and then jumping straight to the letter Z. You've got to have an organized approach to fill in all those gaps, especially when first starting this. Understanding how to improvise is one of the cornerstones of being able to learn and memorize tunes quickly. You've probably heard me say this 1,000 times, that learning to improvise is like learning a language. You know, most learning actually stops when people go past the point of understanding something. So if you read a page in a book that had 20 words that you didn't understand, most likely you wouldn't fully understand what you've just read. In the same way, if you skim the surface trying to learn how to improvise while buying into shortcuts or quick fixes, you're probably at some point going to run into a brick wall, right? So to understand how to learn how to play and memorize jazz standards must be predicated on understanding the musical language to some degree first and foremost. Okay, so here's some of the prerequisites that you'll need. You're going to need a basic understanding of music theory, which specifically includes intervals along with major and minor key centers. You'll also need a basic understanding of diatonic and non-diatonic harmony, which includes harmonic analysis. Along with that, understanding how to play chords on your bass will really help you. This isn't necessarily for a performance purpose, but to gain a familiarity of how the harmonic progression sounds. As we all hear better on our own instruments, this is an important skill to acquire. You'll also need a basic understanding of the elements that make up a line. It doesn't matter whether you're playing a supported bass line or an improvised solo. All of the content that goes into making up a line is the same. And then you'll need to start practicing these elements in isolation and then start mixing them all together. And let's not forget, at every step of the way, you need to be listening to the music that you want to learn and making the connection between the elements learned and what is being used by the masters. So with that said, after gaining a basic understanding of the language of music, when learning a new tune, I do have a systematic approach that I use that really helps to internalize jazz standards and helps to overcome that feeling of being uncomfortable with a certain set of chord changes. So the first step is to analyze the harmonic progression that you want to learn, and then learn to play the chords using 3-note voicings over the whole tune. You need to do this in different keys and try to work on voice leading the chords from one chord to the next. In the next step, you'll need to learn the melody of the tune. Make sure that you're learning this in different keys and analyze how the melody is outlining the chord changes. Then what I want you to do is write at least 4 choruses of walking bass lines over the harmonic progression and learn this in at least 3 different keys. A really good tip is to learn to hear the melody in your head while you're walking over the changes. Next, write at least 4 choruses of a solo over the chord changes and learn to play them in at least 3 different keys. It's also good to learn to hear the melody in your head while you're playing the solo over the form of the tune. In the next phase, learn to freely improvise playing walking bass lines over the form of the tune, and then practice freely improvising while soloing over the form of the tune. So the real takeaway from this lesson is that it takes a lot of time and patience to be a well-rounded musician. It's rare that anybody accomplishes this inside of 10 years or in many cases even longer. One of the keys is learning how to maximize your practice time. If you haven't got my book, How to Practice with Maximum Efficiency yet, then you really must get that because there's so few who understand how to maximize their time. Hours and minutes can easily just go right past us completely unnoticed. What you must learn to do is how to use those hours and minutes wisely rather than just waiting for a more perfect opportunity to practice later. So once you have a working familiarity with the basics of the language and music, running a jazz standard through my learning filter will probably take you between a week to a month to learn and memorize one jazz standard. This seems like a lot, but if you followed this process, at the end of 1 year, you could have 12 jazz standards firmly in your repertoire. If you're interested in becoming a better improvising bass player and learning great musical content from arpeggios to grooves, then subscribe to my channel now. If you liked this video today, then be sure to support my channel by giving it a big thumbs up. And if you really like this video, then please check out my books, my membership website, and my Skype lessons. Until next time, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively.